So welcome back to another episode on games that I believe are 10 out of 10 games. And today I'm going to talk about some retro games. And I just want to say, these are my personal opinions. These are some games that I finished multiple times. And I think they have a lot of worth. I think they deserve a 10 out of 10 next to them. I think they're classics for all time. So I'll ask you guys down below, what are some retro video games that you believe are 10 out of 10 video games? Games that are a gold standard. Games that did something different than all of the rest. That just did that one thing you had at that moment with and you said, this game deserves 10 out of 10. Let me know down below. So to begin with, we have to go back to 1987, where one of my favorite games, I've talked about it many times, I've even, in another episode of Arcade Games, talked and said it deserves a 10 out of 10, and that was the original Ninja Warriors in the arcade. I played the heck out of that game. Your androids taking down an evil dictator. It's awesome, and you're fighting wave after wave of enemies. I played it in the arcade, 3 screens, wonderful stuff. Where on the Super Nintendo, something amazing happened. A game called The Ninja Warriors again came out in Japan. We got it over here as just The Ninja Warriors. And this game was remarkable, but that's not the game I'm going to talk about today. Isn't that interesting? This game is from 2019, a couple of years ago, and it deserves a lot more attention because it hasn't gotten it, I believe. I believe this game should be talked about by everybody, and that is The Ninja Saviors, The Return of the Warriors. Have any of you guys played this game? It is a reimagining of this game here on the Super Nintendo. It's widescreen. They've added more characters. They've added more to the levels. And how is it? It's a 10 out of 10 game to me personally, because I love the Super Nintendo game so much. I love the ninjas going through all the different levels, slicing down the characters. But why it's a 10 out of 10 for me is the gameplay. It is so engaging. No matter which Ninja Warrior you pick to go through the level with, the amount of moves and the amount of things, it's kind of like Streets of Rage, in that you have different attacks that you can do. You can grab somebody, you can tackle them to the ground, you can throw them into other people. I like that style of combat. You also have a super attack that you can unleash on everybody, killing them all. And it's just the sprite work that is done in the game is second to none. I mean, even on the Super Nintendo, you couldn't believe what you were seeing. But then this reimagined version of it, yes, it's an interesting one because it's a newer game, a different take on an original game that was so good then, and they've made it even better now. It's not that expensive. I really recommend trying it out if you like old school games. But man, the graphics, the music, everything comes together. I love the design work in all of this. I like the bad guys. I like the bosses. Everything comes together for me to create that 10 out of 10 retro game with the Ninja Saviors. And I couldn't believe how good it was, and I was so excited that they brought it back for the masses, and I think it got skipped by everybody. It's a bit of a underappreciated gem, dare I say. I would say that for this game for sure. So absolutely the Ninja Saviors. Now in 1992, little did I know I'd be playing one of the best beat 'em up style of games of my life. I didn't know that at the time, and it was a game that I picked up on Boxing Day with a bit of Christmas money that I had, and I went to a video game store and I was like, oh my god, look, the Streets of Rage 2 is there. And I was a big fan of the original Streets of Rage, and I was looking at it in Die Hard Game Fan magazine, and I was like, this looks awesome. I didn't know it would just be in that store that day. It was just one of those things, you didn't know release dates back then. You just walked in the store, if the game was there, it was there. If it wasn't, it didn't exist. It kind of worked out to be that way. But I picked up this game, Streets of Rage 2 here, I brought it home, and why this is a 10 out of 10 game for me is the amount of times I played it. It's over 100 plus times at least. Never mind co-op with friends and girlfriends over the years. So many good times playing through this game over and over. And it keeps drawing you back to the game, and that's because, just like the Ninja Saviors, it's the gameplay at the heart of it. Yes, it has beautiful, colorful sprite work that I really, really love. I love the animation. I love the moveset. But it's the gameplay that's going on in there. The punches, the jumps, you can do combos in this game if you get creative enough. And I just love the movesets. I like how you can grab characters, throw them down, throw them into other characters. There's a lot going on here. And every time I play the game, I feel it's a game that's made for players. Is that a strange thing to say? They've really fine-tuned it so that the player feels strong, and you always feel like you're in control, or when you get hit by enemies, it's your fault. You did something wrong, and it's a game, the more you play, the better at it you get. I love all the different levels in the game. I think they're all very imaginative, especially one of my favorite levels in the game is the alien stage in the amusement park. You walk through, and it's just like a H.R. Giger painting come to life, and there's little alien eggs in the background, and I love the 90s of video games when Sega could just have a bit of fun, take a movie reference and put it into a game, and nobody would bat an eyelash at it. But there's another part of Streets of Rage 2 that makes it hit past the 10 out of 10, and that is Yuzo Koshiro's soundtrack. I still listen to it to this day. I have it on vinyl. Every once in a while I'll put it on, listen to both sides of the albums. I'm like, yes, I'll do that. I'll actually listen to Streets of Rage 1, Streets of Rage 2, and then into Revenge of Shinobi. And that just reminds me of that awesome time. And it's not one of those things that is just pure nostalgia. I think anybody can play Streets of Rage 2 right now and still enjoy it the same way people did back in the 90s. There's a lot of different ways to play Streets of Rage 2 as well, a lot of Sega compilations, so it's not hard to track it down, but a high recommendation for me for beat 'em ups, Streets of Rage 2 is the gold standard. Now we're gonna go right back before this game to 1989, and it was my birthday, and I've mentioned this game before. I believe this game is one of my favorites on the Sega Genesis, and so it's my birthday. My parents take me down to the States. I'm looking for games for my new Sega Genesis. It was so exciting back then, and I picked up Alex Kidd, Thunder Force, and this little game here that I can honestly say I thought was going to be good. I didn't know how good it was going to be, and that is for Revenge of Shinobi right here. I brought this game home, and the thing that I liked the most about this game is the difficulty. It was relentless at first. I was like, oh my god. I would keep dying and dying and dying until I learned the patterns. And then I stopped doing those stupid things, and I learned to get better as I played it. And I just loved all the power-ups that you get in the game. The double jumping was crazy, but once I mastered that, I was able to traverse the levels in a whole different way, and it opened it all up. I like the bosses. I like the strategies for finishing the bosses. Again, what takes this game past the 10 out of 10 zone is Yuzo Koshiro's music once again. I believe he's the first Japanese composer that I ever got to know the name of, because his name was always in the credits. So I was like, oh, that guy Yuzo Koshiro, he does the music, cool. Oh, he does Streets of Rage as well. Oh wait, I like this guy. And then I found out, he does ActRaiser. In the future, on the Super Nintendo, this guy could do no wrong. He still cannot do any wrong for me. My favorite composer from Japan. I love his stuff. And I think his music painted this game so beautifully. It's kind of like having Star Wars without the music. Revenge of Shinobi is the music, it is the gameplay, and everything comes together in this game so well. Yes, they had to remove all the references that like Godzilla and the Terminator and Rambo from the later versions, which I'm so upset about. But the original game is here, and the gameplay is so much fun. I really, really recommend this. Again, on Sega compilations all over the place. Try it out. Now we get to go back to 1997, and I just want to say, I'm really enjoying doing this episode. I get to revisit the classics of my youth and games that I still think really deserve this 10 out of 10 thing. I really mean this. Because in 1997, we went up, we'd read about this game, but we didn't know what to think until we rented it. We rented it at first, and we played it all night long that first night I had it. Oh my god, we played to the wee hours of the morning, and that's for Castlevania Symphony of the Night. What a game! What a game! It's one of those games I was talking to my friend Rob about a couple of weeks ago, and we still believe that this game, is a classic of all time. It's probably in our top 10 games of all time. It's that good. Like Castlevania Symphony of the Night. It's unbelievable. What makes it so unbelievable? You're in a gigantic castle. You're Alucard. What's going on there? You can traverse the entire castle in a Metroidvania style of way. And it was remarkable, right down to the graphics, the gameplay, the animation on your character. This was unbelievable. We liked Castlevania, but this, coupled with the Metroid kind of style of traversing the castle, was unreal. Finding different weapons, leveling up your character. These were brand new ideas in a Castlevania game, and it was done so wonderfully. And again, you can see the pattern in a lot of these 10 out of 10 games. It was the soundtrack also that elevated it to a different level. And that soundtrack, it's Halloween-y time for me right now, and I just want to say that I just played the entire vinyl of the soundtrack in the other room the other day, and it was glorious. And it's as good as the first time I heard it. The music transcends video games. It's beyond this video game. I mean, even if you'd never played the game and just buy the soundtrack, I think you'd be happy alone because the soundtrack's that good. Coupling it with the game is outstanding, and it's the gold standard for Castlevania games still to this date today. I mean, it's unreal. I mean, I just love the enemy designs. I loved everything about it. I loved, the shopkeeper. I loved everything about the castle, and even when the castle gets flipped upside down and getting every single percent in the castle. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. Okay, we're going back to 1995. And I got a small tear here, man. A small tear here. And you know what? It's interesting. This one is not based on nostalgia. There was a certain time in my life that I thought it was. As I was getting older and I was experiencing different RPGs and different machines and games were getting much, much better, I kind of thought maybe that, my thoughts on this game were all nostalgia based. And maybe there's a lot of hype on the game and that's based on nostalgia. I want to say on this date today, no, this game is a 10 out of 10 game. This game 100% deserves it. And as the years go by, the more and more I think it is unbelievable. I went to capture footage for this game. I spent 3 hours on it. It's that good. And the game is Chrono Trigger right here. Oh my God. Okay, the nostalgia is there for sure. What is it about Chrono Trigger that makes it such a wonderful game to myself and so many other people out there? That starts a long time ago in 1995. It was the combination of many things. It was the designers of the game. It was the character designer, Akira Toriyama, his beautiful artwork that transcends the game. It does. It really does. Everything came together. It's one of those games where the stars aligned. It was the perfect timing for everything. The soundtrack, the gameplay, the character designs, everything, the sprite work. Wow. I was playing it the other night and I was sitting here going, what is it about this game that's so good? Everything. Every single thing about the game is perfect for me. And I want to say back in 1995, I did something unusual. I went to a local mall called Johann Center, and there was a bookstore in there, and I walked in, and there was the soundtrack to Chrono Trigger, a game that we had not got officially in this country yet, not yet, and I saw the soundtrack sitting there, and it was calling to me. It was going, John, pick me up, and I was like, oh, and it was a $50 soundtrack back then. I mean, because this is an original Japanese CD, and they marked it up, and back then, things, the infrastructure of the internet wasn't what it was today, so I couldn't just order this online for a significant amount less. So I bought the soundtrack, I brought it home, and I want to say I listened to that music for months and just sat there and I drew the game and all, the character designs, and I was just so enthused by it. And I was a big role-playing game fan, right? So I was like, yep, this game has everything, because I was into Dragon Ball at the time, and I was like, yeah, I was watching the Japanese Dragon Ball episodes, and I was like, I love that. And then I was like, wait a second, he's doing the designs for this game, and we travel through time? That was the big thing of the game, was the time travel elements, going back and forth through time, recruiting different characters through the time periods. Everything about it came together. It was the combo attacks with different characters, the giant spell attacks that you could do, and it was also the storyline. The storyline was very ominous, with this creature Larvos that was going to destroy all of time. I mean, it was an amazing thing, and I mean, you had to be there at the time as an RPG fan on the Super Nintendo. When this game came out, it was a power punch, and I remember walking up and picking up the game. It was like $99 Canadian back then, which is still a lot of money to this day. I mean, that was an expensive game. A lot of role-playing games on the Super Nintendo back then were that price. I played the living crap out of it. I listened to the music. I still listen to the music to this day. It washes over me with such powerful nostalgia, but it's because the game is so good. And I think a lot of people out there feel the same way as me. And it's not because it's an older game and we're just rinsed in nostalgia. It's because it is that good. And it's that Akira Toriyama designs, man. I mean, they are beyond this game. I mean, when I still look into them to this day, this is him at his peak. To me, he's done many Dragon Quest games since then, and I still think that Chrono Trigger is some of his best art. And I just want to say why Square Enix has never, ever done a remake to this game. A full 3D remake. Could you imagine? I mean, they do a lot of other games here and there, and I'm like, why are we not remaking this in 3D? Could you imagine? Could you imagine this getting the Final Fantasy VII remake treatment? Printing money. They'd be printing money. I mean, over the years, we got a DS version, which is a really nice version. It was great to get. But other than that, it's very quiet with Chrono Trigger. Yes, we got Chrono Cross, which is a controversial sequel, spiritual sequel that I absolutely love. But beyond that, I really don't understand why they're not going back to Chrono Trigger. I've always imagined doing Chrono Trigger 2 and having Chrono with like blue hair from a different time period or something. You know, my imagination goes, right? Because I love the game and I really would like to visit that time traveling aesthetic. And what they could do nowadays with it, even just doing a Chrono Trigger 2 or a full-fledged remake, would blow our minds. We couldn't even imagine what that would be. So anyways, guys, I've really had a good time talking about some retro games that I believe are 10 out of 10s for me personally. What are some games that you believe deserve the 10 out of 10 right next to them? Let me know down below. So anyways, guys, until next time.